My parents sold the land I secretly bought to build my dream home, saying, "Family comes first. Your sister needs it more." I just nodded, knowing they'd just fallen right in my trap. Hi Reddit. My name's Elias, 42M, and this story still feels surreal to even write down. Some days I wake up and think, did that really happen? Did they actually do that to me? But then I step outside and see what's left of the dream I spent over a decade building. And the answer is always yes. Yes, they did. I've seen a lot of stories on here about entitled parents, manipulative siblings, and quiet revenge that took years to bloom. I never thought I'd be living one myself. But here we are. Let me take you back a bit, because none of this will make sense unless you understand the people involved. I grew up in a small town in the Pacific Northwest, one of those places where everyone knows your name and what kind of cereal you eat. My parents, Ruth and Gerald, were what I'd call presentation people. They cared a lot, and I mean a lot, about how we looked from the outside. Always said the right things at church, never missed a community event, had perfect seasonal decorations and matching family outfits for every photo. But when the doors closed and the guests were gone, it was a different story. My younger sister Dana, 38F, was always the star of the show. Cheerleader, honor student, homecoming queen. Every time she accomplished something, even the smallest thing, it was a full production. My mom would send out little family updates to her friends that read like a press release. Dana got a B+ on a math test? Let's all go out for dinner. Elias won a regional woodworking contest? Oh, that's nice, dear. Don't forget to put the tools away. It wasn't that they were outright cruel to me, at least not back then. It was more like neglect by comparison. Dana's needs, dreams, and feelings were always the center of gravity in our house. Mine were orbiting Pluto, if they were acknowledged at all. I wasn't a troublemaker. I kept to myself, did well enough in school, and started working young. I discovered woodworking in high school, not the kind you do in shop class just to pass, but the real stuff. Carving, framing, timber joinery. There was something deeply satisfying about turning raw material into something solid, something useful. I stuck with it. Apprenticed under a master carpenter for 5 years, then eventually opened my own small business in my late 20s. Nothing flashy, just custom work, furniture, decks, small builds. My hands paid my bills, and I liked it that way. Meanwhile, Dana married a guy named Greg when she was 23. He was in software, the kind of guy who wore expensive sneakers and always talked like he was pitching something. They moved to California and started their picture-perfect life. 3 kids, golden retriever, endless social media posts about homemade smoothies and family hikes. My parents practically floated every time they visited. They'd always say things like, "You know, Dana and Greg are really making something of themselves," while I stood there covered in sawdust, drinking from a thermos between job sites. I'm not trying to paint myself as some martyr or anything. I chose my path, and I was content with it. But over time, the distance between how my parents treated Dana and how they treated me stopped feeling like a difference and started feeling like a statement. About 5 years ago, I started dreaming about building a house. Not just any house, my house. I'd been renting for years and socking away money. I didn't want a mansion or anything fancy, just something thoughtful. A home that felt like it belonged to me. I sketched plans in the evenings, sometimes while sitting on the porch with Jasper, my golden mix, and watching the sunset behind the tree line. It became more than a plan. It became a goal, a symbol of what I'd built for myself, without anyone's help. 2 years ago, I found the land. 3 acres just outside town, mostly flat, bordered by forest on one side and a quiet creek on the other. The seller was an older couple downsizing to be closer to their grandkids. We hit it off. I didn't even try to negotiate hard. It felt right, and I wanted them to feel good about who they were selling to. I bought it quietly, through an LLC I'd set up under my business. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friend. I wanted it to be mine, from the first nail to the last coat of paint. I spent a full year preparing, surveying, zoning research, checking soil drainage, getting easements in place. It was a slow process, the kind of thing you don't rush if you want to get it right. Every weekend, I'd drive out there, sometimes with Jasper, sometimes alone. I'd just walk the land, imagining where the porch would go, how the sun would fall through the trees in the morning, where the garden beds would be planted. I was planning to surprise my parents with the news once the foundation was in. I even had this silly idea of bringing them out to the site with blindfolds, like one of those home makeover shows. I guess, deep down, a part of me still wanted that recognition. The look on their faces when they realized I'd built something meaningful without them lifting a finger. But things didn't go that way. It started small, as it always does. Around the holidays last year, Dana and her family came back to town. She showed up late to Christmas dinner. She always does, wearing a long coat and a slightly too bright smile. Greg wasn't with her, which was odd, but no one said anything at first. During dessert, she made an announcement. "I've decided we're moving back," she said, her voice a little too high, a little too fast. "The Bay Area is just not the right place for us anymore." My mom practically burst into tears. My dad looked like someone had just handed him a winning lottery ticket. "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. We've missed you so much. This is where you belong. Where will you live?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Dana hesitated. "Well, we haven't figured that part out yet. Houses here are expensive. And, well, things have been a little tight lately." She didn't go into detail, but you could feel it in the room. Something had gone wrong. Greg's job, maybe. Their savings. Something. My parents didn't ask questions, which meant they already knew. "We'll figure it out," my mom said, reaching across the table to pat Dana's hand. "Family takes care of each other." I didn't think much of it at the time. Figured she'd rent something, or maybe even move in with mom and dad for a while. But a few weeks later, I got a call that changed everything. It was my dad. He sounded upbeat, like he was calling to chat about the weather. "Elias, can you come by the house this weekend? Your mom and I want to talk to you about something. It's important." I should have known right then that something was off. But I didn't. I said sure. I showed up. I walked into a living room that smelled like lemon polish and tension. My mom was sitting straight-backed on the couch, hands folded like she was about to deliver a speech. My dad stood by the fireplace, rocking slightly on his heels. Dana was there, too. She smiled when I came in, but it didn't reach her eyes. I sat down, and then my mom said the words that froze me in place. "We heard you bought some land." My mother said it lightly, like she was commenting on the weather or asking if I'd remembered to pick up milk. But I heard the edge behind it, the quiet tension in her voice, the careful way she avoided looking at me too directly. I looked at her, then at my father, and then at Dana, who was pretending to inspect her fingernails like this had nothing to do with her. I didn't say anything right away. I just sat there, slow blinking, trying to piece together how they could have found out. I hadn't told a soul. Not even my closest friend, not my neighbors, not even Jasper. And he's the best secret keeper I know. The only people who knew were me, the seller, and a clerk at the county land office. Small town. All it would take was the wrong person seeing the LLC paperwork and recognizing my business name. That was on me. I'd underestimated just how many people my parents were still connected to. "Must have slipped through the grapevine," my dad added, as if that explained it. He smiled, but there was something behind it. Not warmth. Not pride. Something closer to satisfaction. Like he'd caught me doing something I wasn't supposed to. I nodded slowly. I did. My mom clapped her hands once, almost like she was performing. "Well, that's just wonderful, Elias. We had no idea you were looking for land. Why didn't you say anything?" The tone made it clear that this wasn't actually a compliment. It was a warning. "You did something big without our permission." My parents have always operated under a quiet, unwritten rule. If it wasn't part of the family discussion, it didn't count. And I'd broken that rule in a big way. I wanted to wait until I had something to show for it. I said, as evenly as I could. It was kind of a personal project. My mother's face shifted. The corners of her mouth curled into something that looked like a smile, but her eyes stayed cold. Personal projects are lovely, but when you're part of a family, big decisions affect everyone. There it was. That word again. Family. Whenever they brought up family, it meant someone, usually me, was about to be asked to give something up. I'd heard it before. Family needs you to take Dana to dance practice. Family comes first. Elias, just let your sister have the last of the money for her trip. She needs it more. I felt a familiar tightening in my chest. Not quite anger. Not yet. Just that slow, creeping sense that I was about to be pushed aside again, and that they'd already decided it was justified. "We were thinking," my dad began, stepping forward, "that maybe this land you bought could serve a bigger purpose. Something that would benefit everyone." "Everyone?" I asked. He nodded. "Dana and the kids are going to need a place to live. Something stable. A good school district, space for the little ones. Your land, well, it's practically perfect." I said nothing. I just stared at him. And since it's not developed yet, my mom continued, this could be a real blessing. A fresh start for your sister's family. Dana finally looked up. Her expression was unreadable. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look grateful, either. She looked like someone waiting for a flight, vaguely bored, tapping the edge of her cup with one nail. My father cleared his throat again, like he was easing into a final point. We've already talked to Greg. They're on board. Dana's going to take care of the house plans, just something modest, of course. And we've gone ahead and spoken to the county. It's all doable. I felt the air leave the room. You what? My voice came out quieter than I expected. Almost too calm. My mother blinked at me like I'd just asked a silly question. We moved quickly because the opportunity was time-sensitive. There was a grant for new residential development that Dana might qualify for, but it required proof of ownership. So we expedited things. Expedited. I repeated, slowly. My dad gave me a patronizing smile. You've had the land for almost a year, son, and you haven't built anything yet. It's just sitting there. We thought it was time to put it to good use. I stared at them, trying to process the magnitude of what they were telling me. They weren't asking for the land. They had already taken it. Behind my back. Without a conversation. Without a request. They had moved papers, spoken to officials, made decisions, all under the assumption that my silence would be agreement. How did you even? I trailed off, realizing the answer before I finished the question. The clerk. That's how they got access to the deed. Someone at the office must have tipped them off when my mother asked one of her curious questions. It would have taken one phone call. And if they saw it was owned by my business, not under my personal name, they would have assumed I was just holding it. Like it was an investment. Something negotiable. Elias, my mother said softly, placing her hand over mine on the table. Try to understand. Dana's going through a hard time. Her husband's business failed. They lost almost everything. The children have been through enough. You have no dependents. No obligations. You'll be fine. I slowly pulled my hand away from hers. I bought that land with my own money, I said. I've been planning that home for years. But it's not about you, she replied, and the way she said it, calm, reasonable, final, made my blood run cold. That was the moment. Right there. The turning point. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. They had chosen, once again, to treat me as a footnote in my own life story. Because Dana needed it more. Because family comes first. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but steady. I understand, I said quietly. My mother beamed, clearly thinking she'd gotten through to me. Good, she said. I knew you'd come around. You've always been so level-headed. I smiled, but not because I agreed. I smiled because I had planned for this. Because I knew what they were capable of. Because the land they thought they had claimed, the one they were so sure they could use to launch Dana's new life, wasn't as simple as they believed. And while they were busy congratulating themselves on another win for the family, they hadn't realized the trap they'd just walked straight into. The drive home that night was quiet. Too quiet. Even Jasper, usually bouncing with energy whenever I got back in the truck, stayed still in the passenger seat. He must have felt it, the shift. Something had broken in that living room. Something I didn't realize had been fragile until it snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't hit the steering wheel or call someone to vent. I just drove. Slow and steady. The kind of drive where your hands move automatically, but your mind is miles away, combing through every word that was said, looking for something you missed. But I hadn't missed anything. They'd gone behind my back, made legal decisions about my property, and handed it over to my sister like it was a coat I wasn't wearing. Because she needed it more. Because family comes first. The truth is, I'd seen something like this coming years ago, not exactly this, but something. That's why I set everything up the way I did. Let me explain. When I bought the land, I didn't do it in my name. I created an LLC, a limited liability company, under my carpentry business. Nothing shady, just practical. I'd seen too many small-time builders get stuck in legal messes when zoning or property disputes arose, especially in towns where personal connections often blurred lines. I wanted a buffer. Something that made it clear, this land was part of my livelihood. Not a hobby. Not a whim. The LLC had its own address, separate from my home. Its own contact info. And more importantly, its own ownership structure. What my parents didn't know, and what no one in my family had ever cared enough to ask, was that I'd taken out a construction lien on the land almost immediately after purchase. I'd done it through a small local bank where my friend Celeste worked. She and I had gone to school together. She knew my work, trusted me, and helped me file everything the right way. So while my parents had managed to speak with someone at the county clerk's office and probably convinced them I'd just bought the land as an investment, they didn't know about the lien, or the construction permits I'd quietly filed over the winter, or the small foundation markers I'd installed last month when I thought no one was watching. Which meant one thing, and one thing only: they didn't own the land. Not legally. At best, they had a flimsy claim through some unauthorized transfer or forged document, likely brokered through someone they knew. At worst, they had nothing at all and had just told me, in full confidence, that they were building a house on property that didn't belong to them. So I nodded, smiled, and drove home. Because now I had everything I needed, and I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. Instead, I started pulling strings. The next morning, I paid a visit to Celeste at the bank. I brought coffee and muffins and my paperwork. She raised an eyebrow when I walked in. "Is it happening?" she asked. I just nodded. Celeste had always been sharp. She knew from the start that I had family complications, and she'd helped me structure things in a way that gave me control, no matter what was going on around me. We spent an hour going over documents. She reviewed the lien, the construction permits, the zoning approvals. Everything was still in order. "You're lucky," she said at one point. "If they'd waited just a few more weeks, they might have actually complicated this. But right now, you've got them in a corner." I didn't smile. I wasn't happy about any of it. I just felt steady. "Can we put a hold on any development applications under my name?" I asked. "Already done," she replied. "And I'll put a notification flag in the system. If anyone tries to pull additional permits for that lot, you'll get an alert." Perfect. That was step one. Step two was a little more delicate. I reached out to a friend of mine from the county zoning board, a guy named Patrick. I'd done some barn renovation work for a couple years back. He owed me a favor. Nothing serious. Just the kind of favor where someone makes sure your paperwork doesn't mysteriously go missing. We met for lunch at a quiet diner just off the highway. I showed him a copy of the deed transfer that my parents had tried to push through. His brow furrowed immediately. "This is messy," he said. "Looks like someone pulled some strings. Probably used your family name to smooth it out." I figured. "I can flag it," he said. "Start an inquiry. Once there's a review on the parcel, they won't be able to break ground without it being cleared." Good. He hesitated. "This going to cause a family war?" "It already has." After lunch, I drove back out to the land. I parked by the tree line and walked the property slowly, taking it all in. I could see tire tracks where someone had been out here recently. Maybe Dana. Maybe Greg. Maybe my dad with a tape measure and a big dream that didn't belong to him. I walked past the markers I'd planted, past the small wooden stake where I'd planned the corner of my front porch. I stood there for a long time, listening to the wind in the trees. They tried to take this from me, but they had no idea what it was actually worth. Not just the money, the years, the vision, the work. And now they were going to learn something about me they never bothered to find out. I don't raise my voice. I don't throw things. I build. Carefully. Quietly. With purpose. And when I take something apart, I make sure it can't be put back together. But this was just the beginning. Because before I reclaimed what was mine, I needed to let them go just a little further, just enough rope to tangle themselves. And they were about to do exactly that. The next few weeks were quiet. Too quiet. My parents stopped calling. Dana didn't text. No follow-ups, no family dinners, no check-ins. At first, it might have seemed like they were giving me space. But I knew better. They weren't waiting out a storm. They were busy. Planning. Drawing up blueprints. Lining up contractors. Probably sitting around my parents' kitchen table, heads bowed like generals over a map, designing a future that didn't belong to them. So I waited too. I watched the county website for any permit filings. I got 2 email alerts within 10 days. One for a residential development proposal on my parcel. Another for an electrical installation request. Both submitted under the name Dana Whitmore. They were moving fast, but I was faster. I sent everything I'd gathered to Patrick at the zoning board and Celeste at the bank: the lien, the LLC records, the foundation markers, the original permit applications, and a notarized affidavit confirming no sale or transfer of the property had ever been authorized by me. That's when the real dominoes started to fall. First, the county flagged the parcel as under dispute. Then, the permit applications were denied. And finally, I received a call from the sheriff's office, not because I was in trouble, but because someone had reported a land ownership conflict on private property. My parents had apparently sent a contractor out to the lot to do preliminary soil work, and I had every legal right to shut it down. So I did. I met the crew at the lot myself, paperwork in hand. Jasper sat beside me in the truck, watching intently like he knew this was the moment everything changed. The foreman stepped out of his pickup, confused. "You the owner?" "Yes." Someone else said. "Here," I interrupted, handing him a copy of the deed and the lien documents. They were mistaken. This land isn't for sale, and it's not available for development by anyone else. You're trespassing. He nodded slowly. Understood. Sorry about the mix-up. They packed up and left without another word. I didn't go home. I went to my parents' house. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't even nervous. I was ready. My father opened the door, saw my face, and for the first time in a very long while, maybe ever, he looked unsure of himself. "Elias," he said. "We were going to call no," I said firmly, stepping inside. "You weren't. You thought I'd just roll over." Again. My mother came in from the kitchen, her smile brittle. "What's this about now?" "You know Dana needs this, Elias. You've had that land for over a year, and it's mine," I said. "And it was never yours to take." Dana appeared at the top of the stairs, phone in hand, probably already halfway through a text to Greg. Her face turned a shade paler when she saw me. "You went behind my back," I continued. "You used my name, forged documents, filed false permits, and tried to take something I worked for without even asking." My father frowned. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said, louder this time. "I'm being done." I pulled a thick folder from my bag and dropped it on their dining table. "That's a copy of everything. The lien, the permits, the zoning correspondence, and the cease and desist letter from my attorney." "You got a lawyer involved?" My mother gasped. "Yes, because you made this legal. You crossed that line the moment you filed paperwork without my knowledge. This isn't a family disagreement anymore. It's theft." "You're overreacting," Dana muttered. "It's just land. It's not like you live there." I turned toward her slowly. "And that's exactly why you'll never understand." There was silence. Thick, suffocating silence. I looked around the room, the same room where every major decision in my life had been questioned, challenged, or undermined. I remembered the time they told me college was a waste of money, the time they pushed me to give Dana my savings after her honeymoon budget ran dry, the birthdays where she got trips and I got socks. I remembered it all, and I realized I didn't owe them anything anymore. Not explanations, not apologies, not a place in my life. "I'm done," I said calmly. "I'm cutting contact." My mother stepped forward, alarmed. "Elias, don't be rash." "I'm not being rash. I'm setting a boundary. You tried to erase me from my own future. That's not family. That's control. I've built a life you don't understand, and now you're not going to be part of it." Dana crossed her arms. "So what? You're just going to walk away?" "I already did. You just never noticed." And with that, I turned and walked out. That was 9 months ago. Since then, I finished construction on my home. It's not grand or flashy, but it's exactly what I wanted: sturdy, peaceful, surrounded by trees. I added a small workshop out back where I build furniture during the day and a screened porch where I sit with Jasper in the evenings. The sun rises behind the ridge, and sometimes the fog rolls in just slow enough to make the world feel like it's starting over. I haven't heard from my parents. They sent a single letter 2 months after everything fell apart. It was a mix of passive regret and quiet blame. They said they wish things could have gone differently and that I should remember that family is forever. I didn't reply, because they were right. Family can be forever, but only if it's built on respect. And mine wasn't. I haven't spoken to Dana either. From what I've heard through town gossip, she and Greg moved in with his parents while they searched for another place. I'm not gloating. I'm not celebrating their hardship, but I won't apologize for protecting what's mine. This land, this home, was the first thing I ever truly built for myself. And now it's the foundation of something stronger, a life without them. And peace that doesn't need anyone's permission.